explosive. They just have to really make sure they're doing good jobs with their sanguine management. So since we don't see double hunter, I believe for either team, I don't think it's something we're going to see. But hey, they could prove me wrong here.
I think we are going to be seeing some big trash pulls though into bosses as we start off the series here in this mother load between Paint for Fem and DG Self Perplexed. We see the Unholy DK, the Fire Mage, and the BM Hunter on the side of Self Perplexed. So what are we thinking with that one, Zyro? It seems like they're going to get an early boss pull.
It looks like they are going for, and it actually could be a thing where Mage could technically pull it off if they pull things and then invis. You just have to be careful with your ignite pulling things. But it looks like that's what they're going for. You see, all the Peacekeepers are just now coming in for Self-Perplexed.
Oh, they're coming.
This is going to be the big pull. It's all going to come down to the Sanguine management. Prot Warriors shouldn't have any issues holding threat or staying alive. They can kite this pull essentially infinitely. It's just going to come down to the Sanguine management and making sure none of your DPS die. Let's see how this goes for them. Fire Mage should thrive in this scenario.
I'm just trying to see where the DPS are positioned right now because those energy shields, they need to be super careful with where those are positioned. You can see that Harudra here is doing a good job to kind of kite them around the edge of the room so that the DPS, the range, can position elsewhere and make sure that they're not hitting into into an energy shield. So really good control here. This obviously works hand in hand with that sanguine management, as you're saying, this constant slow kiting around the boss room. But these mobs are like all very slow. This could easily end up with the boss doing one of its mechanics, right at, collecting coins or shockwaving everyone as the sanguine goes down, but they're going to have to be careful of it.
Yeah, I mean, both teams doing a fantastic job so far. No major sanguine healing, especially on the boss so far. They haven't really had any major glaring issues here. They've been doing a good job of just making sure they separate out one mob, let it get its energy shield off, kill it separately. A fantastic job. Slight difference, though, of course, Self-Reliance do have that Unholy DK that got a majority of its burst damage off before they couldn't anymore due to energy shields. And you can see at this point the Fire Mage is kind of catching up in the damage here now that the Unholy DKs are kind of gone and they got their second combustion out. But fantastic job from Self-Reliance, and I think I spoke too soon there because we have a full health boss on the side of Paint for Fem, and that's not something you want to see.
Oh no, that is ultimately not what you want to see. You definitely don't want to kill this boss twice. It's not that fun to want that on anybody. They are going to have to be super careful then because they're going to run out of room with those coins. They're going to have to hope some of them start disappearing on the side of Paint for Fem. Like we say, it's that easy. It's that easy just to find yourself in a sanguine trap. DG's Self-Perplexed, boy, what a name, what a mouthful. They managed to just kind of clean that up nicely, and they're going to be moving on to a massive trash pull. I suspect probably a 4 or 5 mob. Yeah, they're going 8 packs or 7 packs here. This is going to be a massive collection. They got to be really careful though because those throw rocks going out.
Yeah. I mean, the difference in the team comps for sure. The Unholy DK is what allows these kind of pulls. You don't see an Unholy DK on the side of Pay for Fem, so they can't really go for this. You need an Unholy DK to pull this pull off, otherwise you're going to get overwhelmed by all those Rockland castles like you mentioned. And there you can see Unholy DK popping off, doing untold millions of damage, but Harudra has gone down while the trash pack is still alive at around 20%. Without a tank to corral those mobs and move them around, they could get some really nasty sanguine healing off. So hopefully there's not too big of an issue, but you can see already there's an Earthshaper running at him with about 60% HP, and this is going south really quickly. That being said, they still have a massive advantage over Paid for Fem.
If nothing else, this tournament is definitely a spicy one. We see at the same time as Harudra goes down, we see Paint for Fem just like Mio just barely holding on. The teams that like have health, like people are dropping real quick, and it's definitely a spicy tournament. Something that I've really enjoyed about this so far is the fact that, something that a lot of people have been speaking about is the fact that, yes, the teams are, switching roles and Ricky obviously able to pull into the tank role if Fem wants to DPS and whatnot. But like, who's the shot caller? Because in every key, you normally either have the tank doing it or potentially like a ranged DPS, right? With all of this switching around going on, I wouldn't be surprised if there's just a lot of like miscommunication at times and whatnot, where you're having to switch these roles up and everyone's going to have to take a turn with the talking stick and make sure they're in command at certain moments. So definitely a really interesting element of this tournament so far.
To a certain extent, that's definitely true, but I feel like most communication when you're in this MDI style setting where you're running speed keys, everyone already knows what their general situation is. And the only real communication at that point is just kind of reminders. Hey, this is your kick. Hey, this is what we're doing next. This is our cooldowns for
Hmm.
this particular pull. So I don't feel like that should be too much of an issue for the more practiced teams, but that might be an issue for the teams that haven't had as much experience.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And we're seeing just a nice little cleanup here on the side of Pain for Fam. We'll see if they end up opting for this obelisk or if they're just gonna, do something similar to Self Perplex here and just end up pulling the trash away. Whether they end up ultimately killing that or potentially just melding, yeah, they're gonna look to meld that off. So we'll see what Pain for Fam end up opting for here, but they've got to get a little wiggle on because they are ultimately just a little bit behind due to that first boss hiccup, if you will.
They were able to make a bit of a lot of time, actually, I'd like to say, because they didn't have that much sanguine problems and their tank didn't go down, but
Mhm.
not quite getting the shadow meld skip there is going to cost them pretty much all the time that I was talking about. Hate to see that for sure. I have to deal with both of these drillers. But yeah, self perplex just 70% on Azeroth cruising through the dungeon. They've pretty much gotten through the difficult part of the dungeon. There's not that much left for them at this point. You're just talking about maybe the obelisk pull with the final boss.
Absolutely. And the really dangerous part about this trash pool that Pain for Fem are just cleaning up now is those throw rocks, as I was mentioning previously. It can really, if you just get bad RNG, just end up wiping your group as players can just end up going down. If you get a bad hit on the healer, getting a few throw rocks in one go, then you could just ultimately go down, as probably was what happened there to Harudra. But Pain for Fem have just been able to kind of, although it's taken them a lengthy time, they managed to clean it up without any real issues. And we see Self Perplex up there on the second boss on Azarok there, just taking their time. They're reasonably comfortable ahead. If they could just keep their composure and they can just play a safe game, they could ultimately end up taking this first game of the series. We've seen earlier in the competition that Self Perplex have had some issues with their consistency, if you will. But I mean, Junkyard is a bit of a loose cannon, so maybe it's just one of those keys. We'll have to see if this game ends up going, or the series ends up going into a game three, if we do see that Junkyard making a reappearance for these teams.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a reason Junkyard has been a perma ban for some of the best teams in the MDI because they just don't want to deal with the variance in there, right? When you have deaths in that dungeon, it becomes way worse than pretty much any other dungeon. So I wouldn't be surprised if a team like Self Perplexed, with the experience that they had, would just not necessarily be as practiced or as comfortable in that dungeon versus other ones. And I mean, so far in Motherload, we're seeing more of that Self Perplexed that we liked in King's Rest. They aren't making any major mistakes here. One tank death in comparison to having pretty much an entire boss heal up is way, way, way better. But check this out from Pain for Fim here, pulling all this trash on top of the boss. This is incredibly
This
dangerous, not
is
only because
huge.
Taskmaster takes damage from the mobs around it and reduces the damage you deal to the other mobs, but also just because you have the huge potential for sanguine healing on the boss. If you kill any of these mobs while the boss is doing this frontal stun, he can get easily 2 or 3 ticks of sanguine healing off. If you kill more than one mob underneath him, that's his full HP bar healed.
Very cute little play from there on Ricky's side of things as well. Just stands in the mechanic, waits for the perfect time, blinks out, and then time warp, not time warps, but time lapses back, and just gets into position, keeps blasting. Doesn't worry about those volcanics. No skin off of his teeth, I think is the saying, or maybe I've just made that up. Nice little cute little play there, as they just clean that up nicely. That was a dangerous pull though. That was very 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 well done.
Yeah, and pulling that off without an unholy DK to do all the initial major burst on them, that is pretty sick too. I mean, they must feel like they really need to have the unholy DKs available in later dungeons in the series to not play it in Motherload because we know how Motherload pretty much lends itself to these massive pulls that unholy DKs kind of thrive in.
Absolutely. And we see Self Perplex here. They moved on to Rixa Flux Flame there. And it's going to be interesting how they look to play this boss out. They did end up having some trash pulled into that. As you can see, the Sanguine pulls just left remainder there on the floor. Out of the fight, they managed to clean it up nicely. It is just Flux Flame left. So they shouldn't really have too many issues. But I feel like this is definitely the one of the scarier bosses in the game that teams just kind of seem to fall asleep on because there's not many things to do on this boss, but the responsibilities that you do have can be quite troublesome if you do have those dots ticking for a little bit too long. a mismanagement of that going through, you can find yourself dying. So they got to be careful with that. Obviously, they've got to be watching where the boss is facing at all times and just be constantly checking that positioning. So it's very easy just to switch off, be planning your next big pull and then find that actually you just had a misplay. But it looks like Perplexed is doing a good job there just to clean it up. And I think even opting for an additional trash pull in there, they are really trying
Yeah,
to get as much counter as they can into this boss, which is really good for time efficiency.
yeah, especially with that Fire Mage choice in your group, pulling those War Machines behind the third boss here with Rix of Flux Flame gives you access to that overcharge ability, which you can spell steal, and you gain 100% increased haste. So being able to have 100% increased haste on your mage the entire time is quite useful, as we'll see from Ricky's POV here. You can pump out some crazy combos. It's almost like you're playing a Lucid Mage. It's almost like you're playing Lucid Mage when you're playing World Vein, so you should be able to absolutely pump the damage here.
Absolutely, but can they hold on? I mean, Fem is barely holding on by this, like, whoa, barely. But no, he goes down. He goes down. Flux Flame is still up at 70% health. Was it a Sang? No, it wasn't a Sang when she died. I think they just literally pulled her, but Meo's back up again, but Fem is still down. They have another battle res available, it looks like.
They're probably looking to finish off the trash, and then they can get the res off pretty easily. They can kite this out quite a bit with the rogue parry and cloak as well for the flame debuff as well. So once the trash goes down, they're easily able to get the tank up there. And it's not efficient, obviously. The boss healed back to full during that, but making the best of a bad situation is what the best teams are able to do, and that's why you're able to see this out of Pain for Fim. They just have so much experience from the MDI pulling these kind of things off that they're able to barely just get by with the skin of their teeth on that one. But Perplexed, man, they are playing lights out this dungeon. No major mistakes from them already in this dungeon near the end. And they only have a little bit of trash left before they move on to the final boss.
You really got to be wondering how much skin do these teams still have left on their teeth. For me, it's none. This has been a very interesting game one so far. We've seen some slight little misplays across the board. And like you're saying, I mean, it's how you regain that composure, how you kind of make the best of that bad situation, and it's definitely better than getting a full team wipe here on the side of Paint for Fem, where they're just able to hang on, just hang on and just get this Rix of Flux Flame back into the fray, no big issues. But we see Perplexed here transitioning over. They're just cleaning up the last little bit of trash that they need before they end up going on to the last boss here, Razdunk. Are we gonna see? How many others do you think we're going to be ending up seeing on the last boss here? And like, are they going to be doing the? Yeah, are they going to be doing? Yeah, because they're not going to go back now for the obelisk further down the hill. So it looks like they're going to go all four. Are we going to see the kite strat, or are they just going to try and blitz this whole down with a big lust?
Ooh, I mean, we'll find out pretty soon here whether or not they're going for the kite strat. I would be incredibly impressed if they're able to pull off a kite strat in this setting. Let's keep an eye on it. Nah, there's no way they're doing that. Right? Or? No.
It looks like they're going for it. Well, someone's going on a journey.
All right, then. Well, how about that?
Here we go.
is something. Wow.
They are
able to pull this off. As well. Hats off to them.
Yeah. Yeah, if they can do that, that would be great to see. I mean, this is definitely something that we've seen in other tournaments, as you'd expect from, say, like the MDI. But it's great to see it going on here in the KSM and seeing that teams are really here to rumble. They are up for making these big plays here, and we'll see how it works out. We'll see if they manage to pull it off, because they do have to be careful about how they kite. Whether they have to make sure that they retain aggro on all of the mobs and don't get too far away from any of them, as they could end up just kind of turning around and running back towards the rest of the group here, which would be a big disaster.
Yeah, so I'm really curious how this particular run stacks up to any similar MDI run. And believe it or not, in the Eastern Cup of Eastern Cup 3, we had these exact same affixes: Sanguine, Volcanic, Awakened, Tyrannical, and we had a 1449 for method EU. So that's the time to look at here. And it looks like they're going to be probably about a minute off. But that being said, this is a stupidly fast time, even going as so far as to pull off this kiting strategy so far. Now, of course, the dangerous part of the fight is going to be these drill smashes, right? This is unavoidable damage. You're going to take about half or so of your HP and damage for every drill smash. So as long as they have enough self-healing and mitigation to live through these drill smashes, the rest of the fight should be easy for them.
They are very, very closely hanging on there. Haruja very low on health, though he is able just to kind of mitigate that there, no problem on that smash. Lassie was getting dangerously low as well, but it seems like they're through the most yeah, barely hanging on.
There you go.
They are through the roughest part of the fight now. It should just kind of be clean sailing from here. We'll see though. We'll see. They have about all the amount of HP that they need. If Self-Perplexia are able to pull off this early game victory in the Motherlode, then we'll have to see how things shape up in the Altaldazar. Of course, we've seen Paint for Femme in the Altaldazar with a reasonably clean run. They had a oh no, Haruja goes down. Is he?
Oh no!
No, he goes down. Quick res. He's back up. Okay,
All
nothing
right,
happened. Nothing happened. They're good. Just a little bit of teasing there, chat. Don't mind them. They're just showboating, I guess. But yeah, as I was saying with the Altaldazar, we've seen Pain for Femme and what they're capable of with a massive, massive initial pull with the Colossi and Altaldazar. We'll have to see if they can repeat that, but a little bit cleaner. In the side of Self-Perplex, we have no real clue what their Altaldazar looks like, and Haruja's back up again.
What is
He's
going
back
on?
up again, no problems.
He's just
Oh,
dying. It doesn't matter.
weight
The
goes
boss is at
down,
2%.
but they're okay. They
Mobile
can finish
res
it
done.
off.
Easy clap for Self-Reliance. That was a fantastic run from them, and man, this is a continuation from the King's Rest we saw earlier, this last boss. If they're able to go for that and pull it off clean, whichever team is able to do that the cleanest is going to take this dungeon easily.
Well, they won't need to on that one because they're going to have Reaping. So they aren't going to have any of that.
Never mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Hello,
Brian
Reaping's
AFK.
coming in. An old friend.
What is Reaping?
Well, you'll shortly be reminded as we see Paint for Femme are about to double proc. This is going to be 42% trash here in this pull if they can pull it off. This is massively complex, though. I think Memo was just managing to hold on, pumping on some big heals there. No one's really dropping. Here comes the Reaping. I think this is an easy cleanup. They've definitely got this pull down. They've got this pull down.
Well, this is where the Vengeance Demon Hunter comes into play, right? You have the silent sigil for all these grave bolts going out from the Tormented Souls, and that's what they're going to be really useful for, making sure none of that percentage damage goes out. If just having that available to them makes that pull so much safer when the Reaping comes out afterwards. So that's the major difference here. But we're seeing a completely different pull strategy coming out from Self-Perplexed. They're just going for the MDI strat, or the Angry Toast Snap, if you were. They're going for that strategy as well. And that's actually kind of letting them just burst down Rezon instead of worrying about having to deal with only trash. This is really feeding into that unholy DK fantasy of, I do a lot of funnel damage and I do a lot of AoE damage, and this boss is going to melt because I'm doing all that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see which strat is actually quicker. I don't know if you know, with all of your wisdom and experience, Ironic, which strat ultimately, if they play clean, could end up being quicker. But I feel like the Razan first is a strong play. I feel like you end up ultimately losing less time with running back to things. But I don't know. Maybe can you shed some light on that one at all?
I mean, when you talk about Altaldazar, right, it's one of the fastest dungeons. Usually, the fastest time we saw was sub 10 minutes, and there's no other dungeon that really comes close to that. So when you're talking about how to do this dungeon quickly and most efficiently, even coming down to just the route you walk through the dungeon in is important. And when you don't do Razan first, you end up having to backtrack just a little bit with your route. And that 10-15 seconds you spend backtracking can easily just let another team that maybe had one or two deaths make up that time. So going for Rezon first and then doing a circle around the dungeon, dealing with the rest of the trash and the other two bosses, is definitely the most efficient way of dealing with the dungeon.
Absolutely. And we see Self-Perplexed here. They do a slightly smaller pull, yet still very ambitious pull just after Razan there. They end up killing all that trash, and then are they going to look to Shadow Meld off the Reaping as well as the other trash that they've just pulled? It does look like that's what they opt for. So that's going to be a big time save. The Reaping ends up following in regardless, but at least they've managed to shake off any of that trash that they would have otherwise had to deal with. So that was a very efficient time-wise. And that was pretty good to see. They end up pulling just this Reaping in. That's going to be really nice for Waith here on the side of the Unholy DK, just to add some extra damage into Priestess Alinza here.
Yeah, I mean, even though they did let some of the Reaping mobs through, you know what? That's fine. That's just extra fuel for your DK to pump his AoE damage in. But that being said, the Unholy DK just goes down right as I'm talking about him. A little bit of Caster Curse there, bringing that one back. Do they have a res? They have a res available, but they only have the engineering battle res available.
It's an engineering.
DK was their only res in the group, so they're kind of going to have to wait for these mobs to go down before they can get them up. And they, once the Blood Barrage abilities are gone from the Havoc Demon Hunter, they don't really have that much more AoE. But it looks like the second Fell Barrage came up, so they're able to clean up the rest of that trash. But as we're mentioning that, the second Reaping Wave comes out, they need to get this Unholy DK up. There's no other easy way for them to deal with
They need
to
get it back
trash.
up. Absolutely. And is it Harudra on the Mistweaver? He goes down. This is going to be a full team wipe. I don't think. They're going to have to reset the boss. There's no way that they can hang on there with just the two, just the tank and the DPS. That is a very unfortunate play there on the side of Perplexed. We'll see how they're able to recover from this. Because, like we say, I mean, these are very well-seasoned teams. They're experienced players. They're used to things going wrong and having these mistakes. And it is all ultimately, how do you recover? What's your next plan of action? What's your next play? Though I don't know that they're going to have Shadow Meld up to get back to Priestess Alinza. So are they going to have to just clear this trash here? I mean, that's just a nice surprise with the Reaping just sitting there waiting for him. So I don't know what they're going to have to do there to get back into this.
I mean, it looks like you just have to take the L and run through with it. Your Unholy DK is back available. He has his cooldowns available. So you can just, AoE down with the boss again. But this is just huge time inefficiencies, right? You see the Fire Enchant going off, making sure they're all still in combat. Hopefully that's fake combat, because you really want to drop combat before pulling into the boss here. It looks like they did have their Shadow Melds available. Otherwise, we'd see a bunch of trash trailing in behind them. So it's not the worst case scenario, but I mean, you've already had one full wipe, right? If Pain for Fim plays clean, not even the most efficient routing anymore. If Pain for Fim just plays clean and has no deaths, they're going to take this dungeon and send us to a game 3.
Absolutely, and it seems that they managed to just clean up that Razan pull that they attempted earlier today. Oh, we have a death go down, though. I think as Ricky goes down, just gets caught in a quaking barrage there. That's going to impact the play very interestingly. I don't know if they're going to be able to get a res off, if they're even going to be able to reach him with a mass res there. Okay, they are able to. So they're going to be able to, not too much time lost there. They are just going to be able to pick up on Volcal. No big issues there. So I'll be interested to see as well whether Pain for Femme have been tracking, whether the teams are tracking the other players' streams and seeing, how comfortable they are in the lead, or how far they may be behind, and whether that will impact their play and the decisions they make henceforth. But it seems like we say, I mean, they have their strat in motion, and they kind of just stick to it and just play it out. It's not just about beating the other team. It's about showing how quickly you can do these dungeons and just being as clean as possible for the sake of the whole tournament. Because we got to remember, these teams are going up to the winner of this is going up to the upper. Is it the upper five? It's not the upper finals, is it? It's the upper finals.
Winners finals.
Upper finals. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for like a mentality check, right? Having the other stream open so you can keep an eye on them. That being said, a Taldazar is such a quick dungeon that I'm not really sure how much it benefits you, right? Generally speaking, the pulls you're going for, there's no real way to make them smaller. There's no efficient way to make them smaller. So you're not really ever going to go for something easier, I would say. But there's definitely like maybe a mental boost. If you see the other team wipe, you're like, okay, we have some leeway here. But I would be very surprised if these teams were actually watching right now.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be focused on their gameplay. Like you say, it's a short dungeon. By the time you actually deal with the stream delay and the mid-roll ad, you're probably not going to even catch where they're at anyway. So they're probably just going to be focusing a lot on their gameplay here and just trying to, as you say, get that clean run if possible. And we see Volcal just being dispatched here. They're going to look for a big Shadow Meld skip, I believe, before they're going to end up going on to Yasma here on the side of Pain for Femme. So looking just to hopefully clean this up nicely. They do have one more Reaping that they're going to have to deal with if they pull that before boss. So we'll see where they choose to take that.
Yeah, likely they're just going to go for some massive snap. They still have the middle pack available, I believe, so they can do that with maybe some of the sword packs and just burst it down with their Unholy DK. wouldn't be surprised to see just the rest of that 22% remaining trash done in one pull for them. So we'll keep an eye on that. But it looks like Self-Reliance, or rather, sorry, Self-Perplexed, to keep, little vocal tick, too much MDI casting. Self-Perplexed is just kind of going for a safer strat now, just dealing with the trash they have. They're just pressing W at this point, right? That's not that's not really an MDI style pull. That's a much more safer pull for them. And here it is, that big snap we were talking about. Looks like they've got a bunch of mobs. They've got the mobs at the bottom of the stairs plus double sword pack, just bursting it down with the Unholy DK and the Havoc Demon Hunter.
Yeah, they're definitely ramping up there in the numbers. Sepik doing a great job on the Demon Hunter. Very solid player, just able to comfortably multi-class and multi-spec, reasonably comfortable. He's definitely pumping up there. And I mean, you say it's a very scary pull. You see the Reaping getting procced into this. Schiller dangerously low there, as well as Ricky going down. Fem, I mean, this is a scary healing situation. Even with me, we were able to just pump out a lot of self healing or a lot of group healing there with the Way of the Crane. It's just very, very spooky.
Shelly's pets are AFK right now. He wasn't able to move them into position for this pull. They're just AFK behind the pillar. So he did a grand total of 2 million DPS on this pull. 1/16 of what the Unholy DK did. It's not the best thing in the world,
what
but
you
they're
want to
still able
see.
to deal with it. Yeah, they're still able to deal with it. It's not efficient, but you know what? We'll take it. They were able to deal with the pull. And they literally have one mob left for this final Reaping Wave. Probably not going to proc it until they deal with the boss, though.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things where you take that risk when you do these snap pulls. Obviously, Tal'Dazar is probably one of the most famous dungeons known for its big snap pull play. And it comes with a risk. And sometimes your hunter pets just, they don't work. And oftentimes, BM hunters don't do much damage without their hunter pets. So, unfortunately, they're on the side of Shella. I'm sure he'll be kicking himself, wishing he'd played the Warlock after all. I'm going to see them just looking to clean up Yasmin here. No Awakening to have to deal with.
I don't think he was wishing he was playing the Warlock.
We can dream.
Nope. I cannot. Warlock bad. Wait until Shadowlands to be viable again. Your role right now as a Warlock is to drop Hellstones and then leave the dungeon. That's your job.
Absolutely. We're seeing Yasmin here just getting dropped. This is a fortified setting, so it's not really that difficult to boss. You don't really have too much time on this fight where you're having to deal with these spiders tracing around the room that you have to be carefully kiting and distracting. So it definitely eases this one up a lot, it being unfortified. I don't think we should expect really any issues here on the side of Paint for Fem. So we should be going into that game 3 and getting ready for that junkyard.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, nothing else can go wrong here. Even if they proc this last Reaping Wave, they can just Shadow Meld it off and not worry about it. So there shouldn't be any... Oh, they snapped, though. This is just extra damage for the Demon Hunter. No big deal. Just stun it. Don't worry about your tank. They've got the control with the Vengeance Demon Hunter. They should be totally fine. And we should be moving on to a game 3 here, like we mentioned earlier on Junkyard, which I don't really care if you're paying for Fem here. You know that Self-Perplexed had issues before, but man, Junkyard is such a volatile dungeon that anything can go wrong.
Something. Yes, we do.
There it is.
Alrighty, well, loading into our final game, the winner here going into the upper finals. This is between Paint for Fem and DG Self-Perplexed here. We're going to see both teams opting for a very similar first play. Paint for Fem playing it slightly more careful, not opting to pull this trash into the boss. Though Self-Perplexed say, you know what, it's the final game. Let's go big. Let's just pull everything into Goblin here and just see how we do.
Well, they went for this exact same pull earlier on, and they had 2 deaths on it, only being able to battle res one of the players earlier on. But it looks so far like it's going way, way, way more clean for Self-Perplexed here, as the trash just gets blitzed down by that unholy DK AoE plus the Blood Barrage combo from the Demon Hunter. The trash is pretty much all dead. They maybe got a couple trash tossers out that might have gotten healed by the Sanguine, but at this point, the major danger of the pull is gone, and you just have to worry about making sure you get those zap debuffs out so you can deal with the grunters. This is a fantastic job by Self-Perplexed, realizing the mistakes they made earlier on, probably practicing before this match so they can get through this pull cleanly.
And you know what? We were both correct. You called the Vengeance Demon Hunter on the side of Self Perplex, and I called Ricky going for the Prot Warrior. So it seems that we're actually doing our job correctly, Zyro, which is always a positive reinforcement, a feel good moment, if you will. So that's that's good to see. And Self Perplex here, they're just going to be cleaning up Gobbemac, though. Paint for Fem, they're just pulling in Gobbemac now, so they're kind of doing that trash in two separate pulls. I will be interested to see if Self Perplex go back and end up doing a little bit more of trash from the beginning of the dungeon, or if they kind of just proceed on to Trixie Nano or not. We'll have to wait and see
If I
how that one
remember
plays out.
properly from earlier, I think they go straight to Trixie Nano, pull the entire room, and then pull the boss. So they're just
Mm-hmm.
literally all about these mass AoE pulls with the Unholy DK, and they have a route
Mm-hmm.
pretty much specifically designed around it. And as long as they're clean with it, we should be able to see them put up a ridiculous time in this dungeon. But of course, like we were talking about, pretty much the entire series, they just were not clean in the previous series, but they played so much better since then.
Absolutely, and I've been keeping a careful eye on Harujo when he has been shifting into this Unholy DK role because I know he's been having when he's been doing well on it, he's been doing very well. But there have been some tricky moments that he's fallen into where maybe he's just more used to being in that tank role and able to just kind of have a little bit more sustain than he's used to on the Unholy DK. But I'm saying that Sebek now goes down on the side of the DK for Paint for Fem. Maybe he just did he just blast a little bit too much, take a little bit of aggro there? I didn't quite see what happened. And now Milo goes down. This is catastrophe on the side of Pain for Fem,
Yeah,
even
this
with that
is
smaller trash
not the
pool.
greatest moment for them for sure, but as long as the Demon Hunter is able to stay alive, but this charge smash is probably going to be all she wrote for them. There's no way all three of them live through that, and that's going to be a full team wipe for Paint for Fim here. They're going to have to gear up back together and go back and try again. Also, they're going to have to all get a brand new set of bots, including Fim, who has just gone down after they reset the boss, wasn't able to get the Feign Death off either. So that's going to be a lot of backtrack time for them. Check out Self Perplexed, though. They had a lot of issues with this trash pull in Trixie and Dano's room earlier on, but it looks like they were able to deal with it much more cleanly. They're already onto the boss this time around, and they are cruising through Junkyard compared to before. The only real scary moment of the dungeon is going to be that probably 4 generals pull, as well as maybe the double toxic monstrosity pull. So we'll have to keep an eye on whether or not they've kind of shored up those pulls.
The monstrosity pull is definitely going to be where things could come crashing down for Perplex. But if they manage to build up enough of a lead here ahead of Pain for Fem, it might just they might just still be on track to take that win if they play as clean for the rest of the run as they have been so far. I mean, Trixie Nano, they're almost done for. This is no problem for them. They're going to be setting up, getting ready for that big monstrosity pull. I would have really loved to have seen a 3 monstrosity pull so far in this tournament. It would have been really spicy to see a team really try and pull that out. Though I feel like maybe I'm just I'm wishing for too much, you know.
The biggest problem with a triple monstrosity pull is essentially just the mobs in between it, right? There's too many toxic lurkers, there's too many slimes that you have to interrupt the waves for. I mean, there's too much individual single target CC that has to go out in order to actually deal with those pulls. Yes, they can deal with the consumes, but the biggest problem is going to be what do you do on the second cast of consume, right? Because if you spend a lot of your time setting up that pull, toxic monstrosities are going to start their consume cast before they're stacked up more than likely,
I
and then
guess you just hope
it's a
everyone's
huge
killed it
issue of
already.
getting everything stacked. Yeah, everything should be dead by
Yeah.
the time you're getting the second consume off, and it probably wouldn't be there.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And if you do have misaligned consumes, I mean, even pulling 2 monstrosities, if you do manage to misalign those consumes, then suddenly you can find yourself in a very bad situation as you probably wipe and then have to go and get 5 more bots. So definitely safer to play that 2 monstrosity pull. And we can see down on bottom left screen here, Self Perplexia, they are going for that double monstrosity pull. It looks so far like they're pulling it off cleanly. No real issues. They I think we get just we just get the Mistweaver there just absolutely carrying through that pull. They're just able to all stay in during that consume all. They're just able to pop um the revival and just stay in and just pummel that trash down. So
There
very
are the
cleanly
second
done.
consume casts. but it doesn't really matter because the rest of the trash is dead, so they can just wait out those casts instead of having to worry about staying in and doing damage. And I think the other impressive thing is that they were able to pull off that pull without the initial burst from the Havoc Demon Hunter. They didn't have the Blood Barrage available for the start of the pull, so their initial burst damage was a lot lower than what you would assume you'd have with this team comp. Really only being carried by the Unholy DK plus the Hunter, so fantastic execution from them. Only have the rest of this section with the one Toxic Monstrosity left before they can move on to Gunker, and then the rest of the trash afterwards.
One thing I am wondering here on the side of Pain for Fem is with Ricky on the Prot Warrior, do we think that I believe this is the first game of the day for him having to play in that tank role? Maybe this is just where he's had to still be warming up to this tank role. I mean, Ricky's a fantastic player, but it's one of those things where you've just been in a DPS brain all day, and then suddenly you have to switch to this tanky role, and it can just be a case of shifting into a different mindset. And maybe that's just caused some issues in the dungeon on Gobbamac, and then ultimately that's resulted in them just being slightly behind here now on Trixie and Nano.
I mean, let's be honest. Playing a Prot Warrior is pretty much playing a DPS, except you force things to hit you. I don't think there's much of a major difference, right? So, I mean, there is definitely, and that's not to say it's an easy class to play, right? There's a lot of skill cap to it, making sure you get proper spell reflex off and whatnot. But I think as far as tank specs go, it's one of the easier specs to play and be a tank on because there's pretty much just a pass-fail mechanic with it, right? Do you have the mitigation to live? Yes or no? And generally speaking, for 20 keys, Prot Warriors should always be living. That's why you see them able to pull off these massive pulls that we see in both the MDI and KSM today. So I don't think that should be too much of an issue for them. I don't think Ricky's making any mistakes here. I think they just kind of had some individual play mistakes on King Gobbamac, and they're just playing from behind now.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we see Self-Perplexed here. They're midway through Gunky here, or just about near enough. So it does look like they shouldn't really have any real problems on Gunky here. It is a quite a nasty boss with a lot of AoE damage going out, but it's not too mechanically intense where you are likely to make many mistakes on that boss. So should this go to plan, what's the next play here for Self-Perplexed? Are they going to look to try and take a safety obelisk, do you think? Or do you think they're going to look to potentially do all 4 on last?
I think if you're watching the stream here, you absolutely take a safety obelisk. There is no reason not to. You're pretty much an entire boss section ahead here. You had mistakes with it. You had problems with it earlier on. Just protect your bots, protect your win, protect your place in the winners finals. Play safe. I'd be really upset if I didn't see them go for that strategy here, because that's just absolutely the smart play.
Yeah, it is, like you say, it's the case of if they're watching the stream and they do have it on this time around, then they'll know that they're a little bit ahead and that they can afford to take that safety play. And here we are. We see that monstrosity pull now on the big screen, so we can see just how they're looking to deal with it. Ricky does ultimately end up for hopping out there. I don't know if he didn't have the spell reflect there available for that, or if the consume just kind of misaligned. Yeah, spell reflect is just coming off cooldown, so I don't know if he had it available there for that initially.
Yeah, it misaligned. He was only able to spell reflect one of them, unfortunately, there. So
Yeah.
not the ideal scenario for them, but looks like everything's going to work out for them okay, as they just have this one Toxic Monstrosity left.
And Fem does go down. He does. They're not opting for the battle res there. They've still got one monstrosity to do, so they're just going to end up pulling through. He might be going on a journey now to go find himself some shock bots and get some haste before he gets back into the fray. And now we have this pinnacle moment here where we. Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see Self-Perplexed here now decide on whether they opt for that pillar or not. They're going to clear up this trash now before the pillar. So I feel like
they
wouldn't
be going
for
this pillar. They wouldn't be going for this pillar if they were going to do a pillar. They'd be doing the pillars on the other side of the pathway next to the renormalizers. So we'll keep an eye on that. Then they'll deal with this trash pull, and then I believe the pillar that they would potentially take would be after the next trash pull.
Yeah, because what percent trash are they on now? I'm sure we'll be able to see when it jumps up to the big screen shortly. But yeah, so they're going to be opting, like you said, they're going to be opting for this big trash pull here. And then is it Ogre here on this pillar, or is it?
I believe it is Samrak.
It looks like Samrak. Yeah, looks like Samrak. Okay, so they're going to be dealing with Samrak. Just remove that fear from the fight. It is quite a dangerous mechanic to occur on HK8 because that fear, it can come in at a very poor timing, and you can end up running into the boss mechanic and just getting blasted by the cannons in the center of the dungeon. So I think it's definitely the safer play, as you're mentioning. Interrupting Void Weaver is not too much of an issue, really, with the caliber of players that we have here today. So definitely the better Obelisk play here, and it does look like they are opting for that safety play, which is good to see.
Yep. Yep, I love this. And like you mentioned, Void Weaver when you're running double melee is not an issue as long as everyone's in range to interrupt, so shouldn't be too big of an issue for them to deal with that. We saw them even be able to deal with 3 of them earlier on without Bloodlust, so I'm not too worried about them going for that strategy. That being said, man, this is a completely different team from what we saw earlier today, right? That first series that they just barely
Absolutely.
scraped by in a 3-game win, they look much more comfortable. They look like they're just much more safe. They're making the correct plays rather than just having random deaths all the time. I love this look on Self Perplexed.
Yeah, they've definitely come back way more composed. Like you say, they're getting out the early stages of the tournament, and now they're going into apologies. Now they're going into this into this series with Pain for Fam. They get 2 clean dungeons, the Motherlode and the Junkyard. It looks like if all things continue as they are, they're going to be winning this out as 2-1 against Pain for Fam, and they just managed to get back on track. And as we were alluding to earlier, with these teams just being such high caliber teams, they've got a lot of tournament practice. They know that they're going to have issues along the line, so it's just about keeping focus, keeping composed, and just playing it out. And it's really good to see from a great team here.
Wow, and with the amount of times you've seen wipe to that particular pull right there, it looks great to see them just
Yeah.
blast straight through and not have any issues. That was great to see. Really staying composed in a moment like that, which is difficult for sure. You love to see
No.
that kind of looking. And then once again, really all that's left for them is to go straight through this single target burn phase. And if they have the cooldowns available, it should be a breeze for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have Bloodlust available for this for HK8, but it's not going to matter. It's fortified. They've got all their shock bots. It's going to melt. It's going to go down comfortably unless they all stand in the ground mechanic and get one shot. I really doubt that there's anything that's going to go on here for Self Perplexed. Just a nice clean 2-1 to them in this series, and they're going to be going on to the upper finals to play off against BDG, I believe.
That's going to be a series to look forward to tomorrow. I can't wait to watch that one. That's going to be fantastic. Both of these
Mm-hmm.
teams